At 30,000 feet, a pressurized metal tube leaves zero margin for human unpredictability. The formal designation for a passenger behaving erratically in this environment and disrupting the peace is an unruly passenger. The rigid criteria for this classification hinge on compliance. An unruly passenger is defined as someone who fails to respect the basic rules of conduct at the airport or on board, or someone who explicitly ignores the instructions of the flight crew, leading to a breakdown of order. This behavior represents a direct, critical threat to the physical safety of the aircraft, the operational security of the flight path, and the airline's financial viability. To categorize and neutralize this global threat, international regulatory bodies like the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, alongside the International Air Transport Association, establish precise behavioral thresholds and operational responses. This system architecture model illustrates the industry's response. Mitigating human unpredictability requires a strict, multi-tiered defense strategy rather than ad hoc emotional reactions. The strategy is built on three concentric rings: ground screening, in-flight management, and international law. These layers operate chronologically. First, ground operations filter high-risk profiles. Second, flight crews manage airborne incidents. Finally, international legal frameworks prosecute offenders upon landing. Managing disruptive behavior is an exact science of risk architecture. The aviation industry is designed to systematically isolate unpredictable outbursts through a global operational matrix. The most effective way to handle an airborne crisis is to prevent the threat from ever boarding the aircraft. Ground operations serve as this crucial first line of defense. To filter passengers accurately, personnel are trained to identify three primary root causes of unruly behavior. The first involves psychological and environmental triggers, specifically aerophobia, or the severe fear of flying, combined with claustrophobia, induced by the crowded, confined environment of the terminal and the cabin. The second root cause is substance intoxication. This includes the excessive consumption of alcohol or the use of narcotics, either prior to arriving at the airport or during the waiting and boarding process. The third category covers medical conditions. A passenger experiencing an active panic attack or exhibiting behavior consistent with failing to take prescribed psychiatric medications presents a high-risk profile for an in-flight incident. Check-in staff and gate agents do not merely scan tickets, they serve as observational profilers. They are specifically trained to spot the early physical and behavioral indicators of these three root causes before the passenger enters the jet bridge. When a threat profile is identified, gate agents execute the decision outlined in this workflow logic tree. At the boarding gate node, they have a binary choice. They can either approve boarding or execute a strict denial of boarding protocol. Denial of boarding is a preventative security measure. It is designed purely to protect the sterile, enclosed environment of the aircraft from a known variable. Both the ground staff and the pilot in command possess the absolute legal authority to execute this denial. If they observe signs of extreme intoxication or aggressive noncompliance, they can refuse transport. By legally severing the threat at the boarding gate before the aircraft doors ever close, airlines neutralize the risk entirely, protecting both the passengers and the multi-million-dollar operation of the flight. Ground screening is highly effective, but it is not flawless. When an incident occurs at altitude, the operational parameters change instantly. To diagnose and respond to misconduct in the air, the cabin crew utilizes this strict four-tier threat matrix. It dictates the precise escalation of force required to maintain order. The matrix begins with a Level 1 threat, categorized as low or unacceptable behavior. This includes verbal arguments, the use of profanity toward the crew, or refusing to follow basic safety instructions, such as fastening a seatbelt or turning off electronic devices. The immediate operational response to a Level 1 incident relies entirely on targeted verbal de-escalation. Flight attendants use specific communication techniques to diffuse tension and calm the passenger. If verbal noncompliance continues, the crew initiates procedural escalation by issuing a final warning letter. This letter carries heavy legal significance. It is a formal, written notice explicitly detailing the criminal consequences and potential financial penalties if the passenger's disruptive actions do not cease immediately. If the behavior escalates past verbal disruption, the incident becomes a Level 2 threat, categorized as moderate or physically violent. This tier marks the transition into physical pushing, intentional damage to aircraft property, or illicit actions like smoking and vaping in the lavatories. At Level 2, the operational rules shift. Flight crews are now legally authorized to abandon verbal de-escalation and initiate physical control over the passenger to protect the cabin. To secure a Level 2 threat, standard operating procedures dictate the use of specialized equipment. Cabin crews carry heavy-duty, double-loop restraint zip ties, specifically designed to immobilize the wrists of aggressive individuals. Level 1 and 2 protocols heavily prioritize de-escalation, but they provide the crew with the legal and physical permissions necessary to neutralize moderate threats before they can endanger the wider cabin. The upper tiers of the matrix require extreme measures. A Level 3 threat is categorized as high and life-threatening. This encompasses the display of weapons, credible death threats, or physical assaults that cause actual injury to the crew or other passengers. Crucially, a Level 3 threat also includes any attempt to breach the flight deck. This specific action triggers an immediate self-defense and total restraint response from the entire cabin crew. The apex of the matrix is a Level 4 threat, classified as catastrophic. This signifies an actual cockpit breach, or a violent, active attempt to seize mechanical control of the aircraft. Upon reaching Level 4, the passenger is legally reclassified as a saboteur or terrorist, triggering emergency protocols for an act of unlawful interference against the flight. To prevent a Level 3 from ever escalating to a Level 4, modern aircraft rely on a primary structural defense mechanism, the cockpit lockdown. The flight deck barrier is an impenetrable, reinforced armor-plated division separating pilots from the cabin. It is designed to withstand severe ballistic and physical impact. This barrier enforces the most rigid rule of flight deck security. The pilot in command and the first officer are strictly forbidden from opening the door to assist the cabin crew, regardless of the violence occurring outside. During a catastrophic event, the absolute operational priority is maintaining mechanical control of the aircraft. Preserving the safe continuation of the flight via total cockpit isolation supersedes individual emergencies within the cabin. Once the aircraft is securely on the ground, the post-flight reality begins. Historically, surviving an in-flight incident was only half the battle. Successfully prosecuting the offender was notoriously difficult due to international law. The prosecution gap originated with the 1963 Tokyo Convention, which inadvertently created a massive legal loophole regarding international jurisdiction. The specific flaw lay in how authority was assigned. The Tokyo Convention limited legal jurisdiction almost exclusively to the aircraft's state of registry, meaning the specific country where the plane was officially documented, regardless of where it was flying. This meant that if an unruly passenger forced an emergency diversion and the plane landed in a third, uninvolved country, the jurisdictional link broke. Local police in the diversion country often had no legal authority to arrest or prosecute the offender, allowing them to walk free. To close this gap, the aviation industry engineered a complete legal overhaul with the 2014 Montreal Protocol, known as MP14. MP14 expanded prosecutorial power by granting full jurisdiction directly to the state of landing. Wherever the plane touches down, local authorities now have the immediate right to arrest and charge the offender. It further expanded this authority to the state of the operator, ensuring that the airline itself maintains a legal foothold, regardless of where the aircraft is physically registered. MP14 also introduced a secondary, highly punitive measure. It established the direct legal framework for airlines to sue unruly passengers for financial restitution. An offender is now legally liable for the specific financial costs of a diversion. This includes paying for thousands of gallons of dumped aviation fuel, emergency landing fees at the diverted airport, and compensation payouts for the delayed passengers. MP14 consolidated these fragmented geographic loopholes into a globally enforceable framework. Disruption in the air now triggers standardized legal and financial liabilities that follow the offender across international borders. The management of unruly passengers does not rely on reacting to isolated events. It operates as a continuous, closed-loop system of risk assessment. This system filters potential threats through vigilant ground profiling and manages inevitable airborne breaches through precise physical in-flight escalation protocols. Upon landing, the offender faces severe realities: permanent placement on airline no-fly lists, potential financial restitution lawsuits, and criminal prosecution under these expanded global laws.
International regulatory bodies continue to review and refine these standards, ensuring that no jurisdictional gaps remain for offenders to exploit across international borders. Through these standardized operational matrices and unified international law, the industry manages the inherent risks of human behavior to maintain the security and stability of the global flight network.